All right, we are live.
Hello, crypto freaks. I'm here with William Swanson here in beautiful San Diego. This is the Edge team. My name is Brett Musser. I handle business development. I do some copywriting here. I'm here with founder or co-founder and chief architect of Edge, William Swanson. How you doing, William?
I work in the code mines.
Yeah, he's doing all the dirty work, all the big stuff. I do a little writing, a little selling here and there. All right, so we'll get right into it. We'll go to the first question. If I have an Edge wallet installed already, should I keep Airbitz installed, or can I delete it? Should I delete it? Any thoughts on that?
So I am a longtime Airbitz user. Obviously, I was there at the beginning, and I still have Airbitz on my phone.
So do I.
And the reason I still have Airbitz, everything Airbitz does, Edge can do too. Except for one thing, and that's for me, I use Glidera to sell and buy crypto, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have Glidera in Edge.
That's exactly why I keep Airbitz. So yeah, you can, if you're not using an exchange functionality in Airbitz, you don't really need it, so you can go ahead and delete it, and you still have Edge. The same username and password works. And as soon as we get that exchange functionality moved over to Edge, same one, then I probably won't have a need for Airbitz anymore.
I think we're actually not going to be moving Glidera over as Glidera. We're going to find another US dollar buy-sell partner, I think.
Yeah, I think we're exploring different options right now. We'll see what ends up in there.
Yeah. But basically, if you're not using anything that's only in there, I would say, yeah, go to Edge. I mean, I use Bitcoin Cash a lot and Ether and other coins, and those are only in Edge. And for that stuff, it's like, okay, I'm going to open Edge for 90% of my stuff, and then for like that 110% thing, I got to go back to Airbitz.
Yeah, so if you have other coins, you're not using any exchange functionality in Airbitz, you can go ahead and delete it. Edge works as good or better in a lot of cases, and it has more blockchains that are enabled in there. All right, so the next technical question: does deleting an old wallet cover your track? So I guess someone has a little guilty conscience, or is doing something, or maybe doing something that they don't want other people to know about. Thoughts on that, William?
No, there's no way to actually delete a wallet in Edge or in Airbitz. So you wouldn't believe how many people come to us, our support department, and say, hey, I have funds that I sent to an old wallet. Can you undelete it for me? And our architecture is we have backups going back to whenever your account was created. So if you do delete your wallet, we can always go back to the backups from like months or weeks before. We can't read what's in them, but we can restore your account to that state, and then your wallet's back like it was before. So there's no way to truly delete a wallet in Edge.
Plus,
so that's kind of the Edge answer, or the Airbitz answer.
And then go to the blockchain
but then
itself.
The transactions on the blockchain are still there, right? If they can figure out that money belonged to you, or any of those addresses belong to you, then all that record is there in the public. Whether or not you deleted the wallet out of our app, it's all there in the actual financial.
Yeah. Just because you can't see it in the app doesn't mean someone else can't see it somewhere else.
Right.
And I guess the answer to, or the solution to your problem might be using some type of mixer, coin join application, or maybe mixing it with a Monero transaction. So shape-shifting. Maybe if you're using Bitcoin or something else, you could shapeshift out of a certain wallet into Monero and then back into Bitcoin. I think that would be a pretty good privacy action. It would cost a little money, a little time, but I think that would actually work.
That's actually, I have a theory that recently Shapeshift has now started requiring customers to identify themselves, provide some kind of government. I wonder if they were pressured on that because it was possible to shift into Monero and back.
Yeah, and then we'll be integrating some more solutions that are like Shapeshift that don't have KYC, AML type regulations, and then we'll also see the rise of decentralized exchanges are kind of popping up everywhere. They're not ready to go yet, and they're not ready to be put in the wallet, but over time you're going to have a lot of privacy features. There's a lot of wallets out there that are almost solely focused on Bitcoin privacy and stuff like that, and you'll see that added into the wallet over time because we think financial privacy is definitely something that's worth protecting and enabling in the world for a variety of reasons.
And a lot of people think that this is all like for criminal activity or something. But when you think about it, like what's more private than your financial information? I mean, it's everything you ever do, right?
Yeah. And,
if medical records should be private and are protected, the privacy is protected by law. Why not your financial records?
yeah. And from a political perspective, it makes anyone who's some type of dissident or unwanted by power a target there. They can target your bank account or finances or the flow of finances, right? If they don't like your views or something like that. So it's hard if you can't just protect only the people that you like. These tools that make things private are going to help good and bad people, and it's kind of up to everyone to associate and do the right thing. And
well, that's a valid
yourself.
point, that privacy or freedom has to be freedom for everybody, or it's not freedom, right? If only the people that are approved are allowed to speak, you don't really have free speech, right?
Yep.
Free speech has to be free for everybody. So that's a valid point. But even beyond that point, like even if we lived in a free society and everyone was allowed to do whatever they wanted, it would still make sense for financial privacy, even if we were a completely libertarian society. Because why? You don't want to reveal to your competitors, if you're a business, what your books look like. You don't, as a personal person, you don't necessarily want everybody in the world to know what you bought last Tuesday.
Yep.
I mean, that's your right. So, other questions?
Let's see. Well,
so what do you think about this recent ruling from the U.S. CFTC that crypto is a commodity?
Yeah. I guess it just gives clarity in what how they view it, what they think about it. I personally don't necessarily care what they have to put it else. It gives people a framework in which to work on and to maybe build financial products, so they know they know what it is, they know what the government thinks it is, and they know what type of products can be built on top of that. So in the sense, I care about that, so we can have more, I guess, the financialization of Bitcoin in the mainstream. So that would be definitely good for our the bags that we hold, for Bitcoin or something like Bitcoin Cash or Ethereum. So we've defined what they are. People know how to treat them. They know what the regulatory rules are going to be, so to speak. And now we have clarity and we can move forward.
Before this happened, there was kind of the old joke that, well, the Securities Commission thinks that they're securities, and this thing thinks they're the commodities because the CFTC regulates commodities, right? And the other people think that they're whatever anybody regulates, that's what they think it is. They just
define it as something that's in their purview that they have authority over.
Like every government jurisdiction wants to be in charge of it at the same time. And of course, it makes sense that the Commodities Future Trading Commission would rule that they're a commodity because that's what the CFTC rules. Right?
I don't know that much about commodities, or from a regulatory perspective or anything. I don't know if you have any thoughts on those.
So the CFTC is responsible for regulating the commodities markets. So oil, gold and silver, corn, wheat, pork bellies, all these things that are bought and sold in mass, they're regulating the markets. There's something called the Commodities Future Exchange in Chicago, I think. And that's like this old East Coast Rust Belt type of thing where 100 years ago that was the place. Like if you were a farmer, you wouldn't necessarily bring train cars full of wheat, but you'd bring certificates representing your train cars full of wheat and say, hey, I've got this wheat, who wants to buy it? And you would sell it months in advance, and people would speculate on the future price of wheat. And then finally, whoever got that piece of paper, like the hot potato, they would have the train car show up and there would be wheat.
Yeah, when I think about it, as a mechanism that allows, from a useful perspective, not just speculating, which a lot of this will end up just be people gambling on the price, but allowing the mining industry to mature, so they could really start to hedge and build out positions where they're not necessarily as vulnerable to price fluctuations, where they can kind of really just buy insurance, so to speak, or hedge a lot of their exposure to prices, and bake in profits and have very predictable cash flows through using these financial instruments that a lot of other industries have access to.
Well, that's actually why the commodities markets were built in the first place. Because if you thought, well, I'm a bakery, I need to have a supply of wheat throughout the year, and I don't know if there's going to be a drought and wheat's going to become super expensive. So I'm going to go on the commodities market, buy my wheat 6 months in advance. That way, if there is a drought and the price of wheat goes to the roof, I'm okay. I've got my wheat already ahead of time. And the same for the farmers, right? They would say, I want to make sure I'm going to make money Therefore, I'm going to, sell my wheat ahead of time.
Yeah. So to use a Bitcoin example, a miner could sell contracts to sell their future Bitcoin, in say August 2019, for locking a price of $8,000. So no matter what the price is at that time, they still got it for $8,000 at a specific moment in time.
And then they can plan their equipment purchases and plan their power usage.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that is valuable. I still worry that if the CFTC says this, but the Securities and Exchange Commission still says, oh, but ICOs are security, right? Then you've got like commodities law and securities law, and you have to conform to both.
And I've also heard about, so that's like the good picture of it, but I've also heard about, financial manipulation of, whenever you have a market, there's going to be manipulation, manipulation of the gold market, right? And the futures market. Do you see that could be a risk to Bitcoin somehow?
Well, I mean, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin market is that it has been completely unregulated for years, right? There was no government anything. It's just you go on an exchange and whatever orders are on the book, that's the price, which is why we have these wild swings. The government doesn't like wild swings. They'd rather have the stock market be like your retirement savings, where it just goes up, 5% per year and never changes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they don't like to see wild swings. We've actually had that in Bitcoin, which is why because it's been unregulated. And I actually think that's a good thing because it's kind of that free for all, like the Wild West. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it exciting. If you want to play that game, play it, right?
Let's see.
Don't complain.
Oh, I saw there was another news that happened that isn't necessarily Bitcoin news, but it's related to it, and it's related to kind of what we do at Edge. And I saw this story out of New Zealand, and basically they're trying to force people that they're searching to give up their passwords for laptops and phones. And if you don't do it, you're charged $5,000. Now, I don't know how much of that is, sometimes things get overblown in the press, like maybe the person had to do something, even if they did something wrong, that seems pretty Orwellian, to use a pretty common phrase nowadays. And I was thinking of Edge, how powerful Edge is, and that you can say, if you're in New Zealand and you're worried about this, you can actually uninstall the app. Right, and maybe you have a lot of money on there, and even if you give up your password, they can't get into your, maybe they get into your phone, but you don't even have the app there. So it's like it's like your money just disappeared, right? And then as soon as you get out of New Zealand, you download the app, put your username and password in there, and maybe you had a couple $100,000 worth of crypto in there, and magically reappears.
So I know in the United States we have a law which says people cannot incriminate or don't have to incriminate themselves, right? So if I've committed a crime and the police come to me and say, I need you to give me the information that would lead to your arrest, I don't have to comply because I don't have to put myself in prison. So under United States law, if you have a fingerprint or something that you are, like a fingerprint or eyeball recognition or whatever, then the government can compel you to do that because it's something you are. But if you use a password, they can't compel you to give your password because that would be potentially self-incriminating.
Okay.
So in the United States, the passwords are kind of sacrosanct. They're in the United States Constitution. Like you can't require that of somebody. But in other countries, they don't have the U.S. Constitution. I think New Zealand's under British law.
Yeah.
So good luck to you guys. But yeah, it's nice that you can just uninstall our wallet and the money's still there, backed up in the cloud, and no one would know it was there.
Yep.
So one of the questions that was related to the commodities thing was FIFO versus LIFO. Are you familiar with this?
First in, last out, last in, first out, something like that.
So I am dealing with crypto taxes because, all of the employees here at Edge get paid in crypto. And some of us just use accountants and do it. And I decided that this year I would be crazy and try to do it myself.
Yeah.
And what I discovered was the IRS wants you to identify what crypto you sold when. Because if I've been earning money for 4 years, working here, or 5 years, or whatever it's been. And every month I take some of my paycheck and I sell it to cover living expenses, right? And the rest I keep. So when I sell the paycheck I get today, am I selling today's paycheck or am I selling money that I earned 5 years ago and then keeping all of today's paycheck.
Yeah, there's not a lot of clarity on that.
Right. There's not a lot of clarity. And it makes a big difference because if I'm selling my 5-year-old paycheck and I'm keeping the stuff today, I'm selling at a huge gain. Right? Like I basically doubled my income from the IRS's point of view.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm selling the stuff I made today, then my income is my income, and I'm just holding for years.
Yeah, depending on what time frame you're using and how you slice things up, you can get wildly different tax bills.
Exactly. Yeah. So I did my taxes one way, where I was selling what I was making then, and I think it was like I owed the IRS like a couple $1,000. I did it the other way, where I was selling money I earned years ago and keeping the stuff I'm earning now, and I owed the IRS like $14,000 or some crazy number like that, just because of the difference in math. So what they're talking about here, FIFO means the first in, the first stuff you made is the first out. So the stuff from 5 years ago gets sold first, and then the stuff from now. And then LIFO is the stuff you just made is the stuff you're selling first. So definitely, if you're earning crypto, I would say LIFO is what you want to be, because that most accurately reflects the fact that you're selling the money you just made, not the hodl from like 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So that it's interesting. I mean, now that it's a commodity, we definitely have to deal with this, and people are going to have to get familiar with these terms, just like they get familiar with terms like dependents. Everyone knows what a dependent is, and at least in United States tax law. And now they're going to be, oh, what's FIFO? What's LIFO? Well, now we know, because it's part of our everyday, stuff. So that's one downside of it being a commodity and not a currency.
Let's see. How would a recession affect crypto markets?
Well, on the one hand, recessions mean everybody has less money because the money just got destroyed. So that would mean there's less money to invest into crypto. So it could make the crypto markets go down.
It could.
That's not the answer everybody expects, because everybody thinks, well, if things are bad and everything's falling apart, wouldn't people run to cryptos for safety?
You would think thered be less money, but we see during financial downturns, the world central banks just rev up the metaphorical printing presses, which is usually just some type of policy where they, they add zeros to their assets and buy, some type of a lot of government securities and, beef up their assets. So I don't know if there will be a lack of money. I think there will be a lot more money. That might be true if that situation, or if what you're saying did happen, but I think the opposite will happen. So we'll have an excess of, I guess, cash. What we will have an excess of or a lack of trust
in the establishment.
Which, that's the thing about the crypto markets, is they're so small. Only a small amount of money can come in for a huge spike in prices. With something like Bitcoin that has an inelastic supply, where
there's only so many Bitcoins.
No matter what the demand is, right? You can have pretty violent moves up. I don't know about crypto markets in general. Bitcoin seems to be, and I should say the top 5 maybe have the best chance of really capturing a lot of those gains. But a lot of that can spill down into trickle down into the other cryptos, because a lot of people can't differentiate, so they and diversification kind of seems to be a jerk reaction. So they might just,
buy a little everything.
And, we have one system operating and the other system's operating, and there's a recession there and a kind of a general lack of trust that's been building up. And now this other one that's been derided for so long, when you're in a state of chaos, maybe we'll consider this one now and put some money in there. So there's been some huge news about institutional money getting into crypto. TD Ameritrade has just made a few announcements about how they're going to be getting into Bitcoin or crypto products and cryptocurrency like futures trading and stuff, opening that up for their clients. The endowment at Yale, which is one of the most well-respected, I think David Swenson is their principal or whoever, someone who manages all the funds there. He's one of the more respected minds in, I guess, asset allocation in general. And they just committed funds to a new crypto hedge fund. So they're heading in that direction. I would expect, in my opinion, and part of the reason I'm here, I would expect a huge move over to crypto in a economic downturn. Yeah.
What I would
and a flooding of liquidity of fiat, because that's kind of been the central bank's knee-jerk reaction. So, yeah, confidence is lost. What do we do? Flood the market with money.
So what I saw in 2008, like in the weeks after the crisis started, everything's chaos. There's blood in the streets, right? Markets tanked because there's nothing else they can do. Everybody's trying to cash out their assets to get liquidity just to survive. So I would expect something similar with crypto, right? The black swan event happens, the housing market pops, whatever it is that precipitates the next financial crisis. Everything drops, including cryptos. And then what you see over the next years is this nice, I guess I'm doing it backwards for the camera, this nice upwards, trajectory fueled by the printing presses and the need to escape that failing system and move to something more secure. Yeah. Because this last time, what it was, the housing market was the last precipitator, right? And then all this printed money has gone into, student debts are now huge and stocks are going back up to the moon and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, so it moved out of one asset class into another.
Goes into another, yeah.
Exactly.
And I think what you're also describing, there might be a lack of money in a recession because under the current system, money is associated with credit. So there's a credit freeze. No one's lending
because no
right?
one trusts,
because that's what money is in the current system, where it's just a set of promises stacked up, and they stack up kind of infinitely until it all kind of crumbles down, and then the central bank has to come in and give everyone credit, right? And just reliquefy everything, and that destroys the value of the currency to prop up these institutions, banks, and the markets in general. And what you get is a depression of the actual spending power of the currency, which everyone has been working for. And this is this is kind of why we're all here, and we're seeing this all around the world in Argentina and Iran and Turkey. And you even see it in the United States, but at a smaller level, because we're kind of
we're top dog on the dog pile.
Yeah.
So far,
we're the prettiest house on an ugly block. Right? That's basically like what is a strong dollar means. It's not decaying as fast as the other ones. That's what the strong dollar means. It's not actually strong.
So I remember about 8 years ago, or whenever the last crash this was, things cost about half what they cost now. Food was about half.
And that was only 8 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
The prices have basically doubled. I mean, anything you can think of. What did a lunch cost? What did anything you could? It's about double.
Yeah.
I think. I'm not quite sure because I'm not like a statistics, but that's my gut feeling.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and I would agree. Right. I feel like everyone feels that.
Right. What's the candy bar now? It's like a $1.50, $1.80, something like that. And back then it was probably about $1 flat.
Pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's see. I guess on a more technical side, not as high level, SegWit, which was an upgrade pushed out in 2017, it got up to 50% usage on the network. Any thoughts on that? Or it was pushed out on the Bitcoin network, and it was kind of slow at first, gaining adoption. It needed wallets to implement it. We implemented it pretty fast, and we've seen, I guess. Yeah, since that time, it's been a pretty slow, steady trend upward, and it actually crossed 50% for the first time.
Interesting.
So I guess some of the users are going along with the incentives that SegWit enables.
Slightly cheaper transaction fees than regular.
And I was talking to our CEO Paul, and I think he brought up a good point that someone else brought up, was that it might be cheaper for the user, but it actually uses more resources by the network.
Right.
Can you explain how that would work?
So Bitcoin has a hard limit of 1 megabyte blocks. That's kind of baked into the code. It's been there for years, and no one can change it because that would be a hard fork. And so SegWit isn't able to change that 1 megabyte limit. They can't, because that would be a breaking change, and no one wants to do a breaking change. So what they do is they create this other area on the side. So you've got the 1 megabyte block that's always been there, plus this extra side space that's...
It's an engineering loophole.
Yeah. So when you make a SegWit transaction, half of it goes into the precious 1 megabyte space, and the other half goes into this sort of free area. And so it costs half because we're using half of that limited 1 megabyte resource, but it's still taking up space in this other area. And it's not, I say it's free, but it could have been free, but they chose to give it a price which is, I think, a quarter of the price of the main block. So any data that goes over here is worth much less in terms of price, because it's much bigger. Anyway, that is to say that it is cheaper, even though it's taking up more actual bytes on the network. It actually consumes more resources to do a SegWit transaction than a regular one. But because of the way there's this legacy thing, they end up being not as limited.
And then it also allows, it also allows for, I guess, more transactions into a certain block, right?
Because each transaction, half of it goes into the main limited block, and then the rest goes in this other space, so we can fit twice as many into it.
I was looking at a website that I guess tracks this stuff, and there's been a lot of different blocks that have been close to, I guess, 2 megabyte instead of, even though the rules say there's only one. If you have enough SegWit transactions that are kind of filling that block, you can get up to the level of like 2 or 3. I don't think it's been to 3, but there's been blocks that have been 2. So you have like
the original block area is still only 1, but the reason it's 2 is because you got that extra tack on it area that's now got more.
Gotcha.
And this is one of the things that the Bitcoin core developers are very much focused on the network level. They're focused on the protocol. So that's why they didn't want to make SegWit a breaking change. They wanted to keep it backwards compatible, so they weren't able to change that 1 megabyte limit because they didn't want to change anything on a technical network level. But what they did instead is they created something where all the wallets have to change. All the merchants have to change. All the wallet providers have to change. All the users have to change. All the addresses have to change. Everything above sort of the protocol ends up changing in order for SegWit to work.
See, that's where, as a non-engineer, I understand the difference between a hard fork and a soft fork on the definitional level, but then when it comes to actual implementation, it's like, functionally, pretty much everyone has to upgrade, and it becomes it becomes a functional hard fork, and in my estimation, as like a user.
So what they're thinking about it from the lenses of the protocol, and from that perspective,
it's right.
From their perspective, nothing changed. It's all backwards compatible. But then from the perspective of everybody else, like everything built on top of Bitcoin, it's a complete rewrite.
That you pretty much have to go along with.
Well, I'm going to say complete rewrite's a little harsh, but
exactly. It's not.
There's a lot. Everyone has to change everything, and everyone has to change together, because if I support SegWit and you don't, I still have to send you a legacy transaction, and it's not until you and I both support it that we can.
That's the thing. It's like it's a loophole, right, around a certain rule set, and avoiding something called a hard fork that would be that they thought would be contentious, right, and they kind of wanted to use a different mechanism to push it through.
So if you had done a hard fork where everybody upgrades the node, and that's basically backwards compatible with the node they had before, everything is interface wise the same, and then the protocol, like the addresses don't change and all that, that's actually less invasive on the ecosystem than making the node backwards compatible and having all the software update. I feel like that. But that's because I'm a wallet developer, right? I'm sure the network developers would say the opposite, because that's their problem and not mine.
That's what makes Bitcoin an interesting game. Everyone's got their own incentives, their own perspective, and we all have to kind of talk and argue and figure out. And sometimes there's irreconcilable differences, right? And we got Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin private, whatever.
What do you value more? Do you value the ecosystem built on top of the currency, and the protocol can be changed as needed to satisfy the needs of the ecosystem? Or do you value the protocol, and the ecosystem can just shove it, and in order to deal with the needs of the protocol?
And I think people get locked into the or,
either or,
right? Where it's like we all got to kind of shift together, right? And it's not always like this or that, right? There's always these like categories kind of spill over into the others, and you need both, right? And you have these chicken and egg problem. Well, how do you get people on this side and this side together? It's hard. And the way people have solved it is they go their own ways, and now we have these parallel experiments, and we'll see which set of engineers are more correct, or whatever the market kind of plays out. One last question from from user. How will you move forward with transfers without Shapeshift? Okay, we mentioned this before, but we're going to be adding more services like Shapeshift over time. We're working on it right now. And so you won't, if you don't want to use Shapeshift and you want to sign up for their membership, you don't have to, and you'll still be able to shift, or I guess exchange in and out of different cryptocurrencies. And we should have, I feel like 3 or 4.
We're not naming names at this point, but I hear you on the phone. You're negotiating with these guys, these other guys, and trying to make that happen. So
yeah, so there will be other options, and one of the cool things we'll be able to do is we'll be able to pick based on what currency what I guess assets you're trying to shift in and out of or exchange in and out of. We'll be able to pick which exchange would be cheapest at that time.
So if I've enabled Shapeshift and I've enabled some other ones, and plus the ones I don't need enabled because they're just always available without KYC, and then I go out and I say I want to shift Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash or something else, then it will go out and say, okay, there's these 5 ones. This one's got the cheapest price. That's the one we'll go with.
Exactly.
But if I haven't enabled Shapeshift, I haven't logged in, then we won't even consider it. We'll just go, what's the cheapest price of the ones that don't have KYC?
Yeah. So
it's all going to be automatic.
Yeah. Don't worry if you don't want to be a member of Shapeshift. You don't have to. If you do, that'll be available for you as well, and you have another good option. All right. So I think that that wraps it up for today. Any closing thoughts?
No. Do we need to have any announcements or anything like that? I mean, see us on social media. If you're watching this, you know where our social media is, obviously.
Yeah, we're on Twitter, Facebook. Let's see, what else? We got a YouTube channel. I think we post this on YouTube, but we haven't had a lot of videos on there. And what other channels we got? We are on we got an Instagram page.
We do.
We do. For all the millennials out there, shout out. Yeah, I think that's it. You can reach us at support@edge.app. And, goodbye from San Diego. Have a great day.